Welcome to the Time for a Reset podcast, the podcast where I, Paul Frampton, interview senior marketers on the big issues of the day and the thing that they want to see reset with an ever-changing landscape. Welcome back to another episode of Time for a Reset. This morning, I'm delighted and very lucky to be joined by Matt Bushby, who's the marketing director for JustEat, where he's been for 5 years. So through some really exciting kind of evolution at JustEat. And he's been in his recent role as marketing director for the last 2 years. Prior to that, Matt has had senior marketing roles in digital businesses across a variety of sectors. So he comes to this with a huge amount of experience in marketing in a digital world. And when we were talking in our pre-chat, we were talking about the fact that in a digital business like JustEat, digital transformation is not quite such an important thing when actually your entire business is digital. So Matt, just wanted to turn over to you, I guess, to start on what you would most like to hit reset on, because that's where we start these conversations, and then we'll take it from there.
Hey, Paul. Firstly, thank you for inviting me. We're looking forward to this. I think it's really interesting, a question to be asked, and I think, what would we reset on? I think the thing for me is that marketing represents so many different touch points across our business, and JustEat is inherently a marketing-led business. So I think it's important for us, and it has been as a business, certainly over the course of the last 18 months now, to ensure that we're, I guess, using marketing as a way of engaging with our customers, but actually helping us to drive and support the business. And I think that's played across a whole number of different areas. We're a marketplace business, so effectively we've been ensuring over the course that we're doing the things that best support our restaurants, best support our couriers, best support our communities as well. And that's changed and that's evolved. And I think we've kind of, rather than necessarily being a reset, it's been an evolution, and it's been about trying to sort of react in the right way and plan in the right way that means that what we're doing is the right thing for our business, but is relevant for our customers as well. And I think we know that the pandemic has changed customer behavior across all sectors. And no more so is that true than in food delivery. And I think one of the key things has been making sure that we're engaging with customers around the things that they love. So we made sure that actually what we did as a marketing team was really to make sure we understood our customers and make sure we understood actually what does pandemic life look like for them. And that can be really, really simple stuff, like making sure that we're bringing the best supply and the right things to them at the right time, surfacing that in the right way. So we saw a big growth in breakfast. We saw 200% plus growth in our breakfast business.
Wow. How
do we make sure that we've got all the supply that you really want? So whether you want to get a sort of prep bacon and egg baguette in the morning, or whether you're looking for some porridge from your local cafe, you're making sure that actually at that moment you're giving people the right thing. But we also there's been bigger themes, of course, there have been bigger things that people have turned to as part of their sort of journey through the last 18 months. And for us, two of those big things have been around sport, particularly one of the few things that continued throughout the pandemic and the big moments there. And we kind of built towards that, and we built with sponsorship of Premier League on BT Sport, with working with Sky on various partnerships, working with TalkSport. But then that really built up to that big moment that was the Euros, and that join of football and food is a pretty natural one. But it also was just such a huge platform, and a platform that certainly was helped by England's incredible tournament and ultimate painful, not failure, but certainly missing out at the very last moment. But that gave a huge platform. There's 31 million people watching that final, which is, by various different estimates, the biggest commercial TV audience there's been. And I think we were at the heart of that, and that was incredible. And that was really something that I think as a business has sort of helped us to become top of mind for customers. And we did the obvious stuff, which was the pitch side, but we actually did a huge amount around building content that was bespoke for the tournament. So whether it be with Eric Cantona, or whether it be doing a sort of content series.
Yeah, I love the Cantona stuff as a Man United fan.
Of course. And Eric Cantona's impassioned build up to the England-Scotland game that we did.
Yes,
It got me going for the game, even if the game itself was fairly dreadful. But but actually we built our own content series, long form content, which I think sometimes people would advise you against doing, but we built a big sort of magazine series where we had the likes of Ali McCoy, Joe Cole, James Collins, Casey Stoney, and many others to sort of really build that association with the tournament. And then we did the sort of fun stuff. We did a big partnership with Greg's Rolls for Goals. So if a goal was scored by one of the home nations, then we'd give free sausage rolls out the next day. So all of those different things kind of, that return of joy, that return of normality, and our brand as a whole is about delivering joy. And we're able to do that with the Euros. We also had a great platform in Love Island as well. So that kind of the joy of the summer and the return of some degree of normality was one that we were able to celebrate through our association with Love Island as well. So it's been, for us, really an opportunity to be at the centre of a very quickly changing world and a quickly changing set of customer needs. And I think our challenge as marketers has been to ensure that we do that in such a way that means that it feels authentic and it feels as though we're doing things that really add to our customers' lives.
Right. No, I really like the way you talk about that. And listening to you, I mean, the things that you're doing feels like a very mature brand. I suppose where I'm imagining where JustEat started was much more kind of towards the bottom of the funnel performance channels, but you're now investing in sponsorship, in long form content, in kind of very, I guess, activation orientated kind of brand marketing. So could you maybe just reflect on like the journey that JustEat's gone on while you've been there, and how you've won, I guess you've won trust from the kind of board to start to invest in some of this stuff that doesn't probably drive short-term trading, but obviously has a real impact on the growth of the business and retention and everything else going forward?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a pretty common story with a lot of digital businesses that have grown from startup and have scaled, and we've been very lucky to have scaled quickly and continuing to do so. I think we sort of just did our H2 results and we scaled 60% plus year on year off a pretty big base anyway. So we've been very, very fortunate to do that. But I think one of the things that has been key when we're thinking about where we want to make our investments, because you think about those digital businesses, you think about those startups, it's often a case that they've built, as you say, from a performance base, and then it's about how you bring people on that journey, how you make sure that your board, your management team, the key stakeholders are really bought into what you're trying to do as marketers. And I think the part of that is actually how you tell the story, how you make sure there is a really clear rationale for why this investment works. And JustEat started on that journey pretty early. So we've always been sort of big believers in brand and in making sure that we're able to invest in that brand, and the impact that having that investment makes on long-term growth is huge. So the story that I tell and the story that we tell is very much one to the board of that need for continually investing in a brand. Because I think one of the challenges is in a digital business is you've got lots and lots of data, lots and lots of performance data. So the ask is often for immediacy of results, and show me exactly how that thing there that you did over there related back to that result you drove there. And that's not how investing in a brand works. It's about long-term returns. It's about making sure that you're at the top of mind for your consumers, but also that you're building that sort of long-term consideration and saliency. So I think the way in which I've kind of presented it is that there is no single way that that one can measure these things. I think it's best to sort of look at the way in which we kind of invest as a sort of an iterative build. So making sure that we've got those sort of performance foundations in the right place. They're working, they're delivering, we're iterating, we're testing. We've got a machine that's using the data that we've got to really help us to create that performance and to continually improve that performance. But actually, what do we need to do in order that we deliver that sort of big top of mind awareness in the minds of our customers, but also, as I say, that saliency and consideration, and making sure that we're planning our media, we're developing our messaging, we're developing our creative platforms in such a way that we're able to deliver against those, and we're very clear what the various different elements of our plan is there to deliver. And I think telling that story is very important, and being very, very clear around what our measures of success look like within that gives you the trust of your board or of your stakeholders to ensure that they said they were going to do this. They said that this was how they were going to measure it, and this is the set of results that they've come back to with us. So I think having that clarity and having that visibility is really important, because I think what some of the criticisms the marketers sometimes get is it's a bit of a black box. It's a sort of a trust me, this works. And actually, well, why would you trust me? We're spending money here. It's really, really important that you can see what that return looks like. But for us as marketers, the importance is being very, very clear what those measures of success are and how we think we're going to affect them.
Right. And I think it's always interesting, like there are obviously lag measures, which everyone wants to get to as quickly as possible, but there's a lot of really important lead measures in marketing where you are investing for the long term, where you can just start to see, is there some resonance, some shift in certain metrics? Could you maybe just talk about some of those kind of metrics that you use in the early days of putting sponsorship live, or some of the Euro stuff? Because obviously there's a lot of reach out there and you can show reach numbers, but reach doesn't necessarily show that you're getting that all important engagement from people and maybe bringing new people into the category.
Sure. And I think the way I think about measurement within marketing is effectively you have an assembled set of clues. If you've got the right measurement platforms, then what you're doing is taking pieces of information that help to give you clues as to what's working, what's not. And I think part of that is trying to avoid looking for that one silver bullet, looking for that one place where you can go and find the information that's going to say it worked or it didn't work. So that very rarely exists to my mind. But actually, if you're looking through that funnel at whether it be trading metrics, whether it be brand measurements, multi-touch attribution, econometrics, sentiment analysis, customer research, you're looking for different measures on different activity at different moments that help you to clearly define why you're doing something and whether it works. And to your question specifically around those sort of lead versus lag measures, I think sponsorship's a really, really important one, and really important one where you're setting out your approach and setting out your what people can expect to see from it early on, because they are big investments, and they're long-term investments, and they're investments in your brand, they're investments in associating your brand with things that people love, things that people care about, things that people want to watch and engage with and enjoy. So part of that is making sure that people don't expect everything on day one, and because
well, you see quite a lot of sponsorships start for a while and then disappear, I think, just because of that, because maybe the wrong expectations are set and people are expecting things to happen far too quickly.
Exactly that. And I think there's always that challenge, which is from the board, well, we spent a lot of money, why is it not returning? And why it's been live a week? Why is it not? Why am I not getting my return in revenue? And I think that what we try to do is to sort of set that up, and whether it be through Love Island, whether it be through the Euros, understanding those very early signs, so that social sentiment, and making sure that people are engaging with the work you've done. You can see it whether it be around sort of TV idents, what people are saying, how people are engaging with the content. We'll have done a lot of pre-testing up front as well to make sure that we've set ourselves up properly. But then sort of starting to get into, well, what are we seeing at a channel level? What are we seeing with some of those early signs from a brand sentiment point of view around things like purchase intent, around engagement, around a brand for me? And then you just start to build that picture, and you can start to, well, okay, they were the sort of early phase metrics. Tick. We'll move into the sort of bigger, broader brand metrics like top of mind. And then eventually what we want to make sure is that we've got a linkage between those and orders. And we've looked at proving those linkages within sort of some of our modeling and some of our econometric work that we've done in the past. So it's all got to come back to you're doing this at the end of the day because you want to grow the business and because you want to drive commercial success. It's just that there is sometimes a longer lead time and a longer burn on the impact of improving brand metrics that then sort of run through into driving sales. So I think that's key. There are some moments where you get some really great short-term wins. We had a huge order day the day after the final of the Euros. Our biggest ever Monday, primarily driven by the fact that, long story short, then I think the nation was a little bit hungover. So our breakfast
hungover, and a lot of people have been given the morning off or decided to take the morning off.
Exactly. So our breakfast business went through the roof. It continued into lunch, and then I think there was a general shrug of the shoulders and a sense that actually cooking is not for me today. So people continued on through and ordered dinner with us as well. So there are moments where your association with a tournament and your linkage with a sort of big moment can really play through and into great short-term returns. And it's very similar story with the England-Germany game as well. So there's I think a need to make sure that you communicate that up front, and you're setting out, well, what can you expect to see and when? And how can we come back to you and make sure that we're really clear as to what that story is? And sometimes in time, sometimes these things don't work, and sometimes you've got to be clear about that as well, and you've got to be clear about why it didn't, and then you've got to make sensible choices off the back of that, because nobody does everything right all of the time.
No, of course not. No, and I don't think any board or investors actually expect that. They just I think any stakeholders that have got an investment in it, whether it's an investment kind of just because they run the business or a physical investment, they just want to see regular data points to feel confident, don't they? And I like what you say about, you can show data if you have a weekly leadership meeting or board meeting. You can show them data. It's just not all going to be sales or trading data. It's going to be the data further upstream, but just to show that we're on this, we've got some ways of tracking it, and you can be comfortable that things are moving through, and we can predict that some of this will turn into kind of net new revenue and new customers. But we can't predict it accurately. But I think part of the problem is that a lot of the time with a big brand activity, people will go, well, we can't tell, we won't be able to tell you what's happening for a couple of months. We'll come back to you in a couple of months. And immediately, I mean, I've always found whenever you work with C-level, what they like least is a lack of communication, because a lack of communication and lack of evidence automatically leads to anxiety around, it can't be working, I need to ask questions, I'm going to come down on these people, whether that's marketing or sales or whatever part of the organization. So I think it's some really good advice there, that people should just think a little bit more about the sequential kind of metrics that you can start to show that prove that it's resonating, it's starting to shift on, because people don't respond immediately to most things. Let's face it, that's not how advertising works.
No, I agree. And I think it's that open communication that's key, and that cadence of communication and that predictability, which I think means, I mean, to be blunt, if you don't say anything, people's first instinct is, what are they hiding? And,
totally.
And that's not a great place to be. That's not a good starting point. Don't want to be walking into that boardroom. So it's critical, as you say, to make sure that you're making sure that what you described when you first talk through the rationale for the activity that you're doing continues through into the way in which you measure that, and then continues into a regular cadence of communication.
Yeah, nice. So with the same theme of, I guess, kind of winning the confidence of the board, how do you ensure that marketing is pulling on the right commercial levers to drive growth? I mean, you've just talked obviously about measurement and kind of as much precision around what's working and assembling the clues, which I think is one part of it. But just interested in how you think about that, as you touched on right at the beginning, all of the touch points that marketing has. I mean, advertising is a part of it, but it's not a small part, but it's certainly not all of it. And unfortunately, a lot of folks in the industry, particularly agencies, sometimes obsess about that part and don't think enough about all of the other touch points. So how do you think about the commercial levers that you can pull to actually drive the business forward? It's not just media. What else are you looking at?
Well, it's interesting. Somebody smarter than me once said, I think brand is everything and everything is brand. And that sounds all very high-handed, but in reality, It's true, because customers engage with you as a business and engage with the various different touch points that you have, and they don't care whether it's your curated advertising or whether it's your product, or whether it's their experience with your customer care team, or whether it's for us the interaction they have with the delivery driver or the brands that have on the platform. The reality is that the way people feel about you as a business and the inevitable sort of commercial impact of that is driven by everything and every touch point. And I think the key thing for marketing is to feel as though we are the representative of that customer. And I think that's really, really important, because as soon as you see yourself as the advertising team, you kind of, I think, abdicate responsibility for the customer. And I think that's where you start to get into real commercial difficulties, because, well, we've got to be that. I mean, you can't have finance as the voice of the customer. So you got to make sure that you're the ones who are really banging on that door. And I think for us, we're trying to do that across a whole number of different areas. And we can kind of go back to the pandemic, and I briefly touched on this before, but we kind of saw the role of marketing change in that moment. And actually that meant that we thought less about, well, what's our short-term order driving activity that we need to run, and more about actually how do we play the right role and the role that our customers expect of us. So that meant offering NHS discounts. That meant working with children in need. That meant working with the likes of ITV around Britain Get Talking. There were various different moments that we wanted to make sure we were there, and we were part of helping to find that solution, helping to be part of a sort of a wider thing, which is really what I think people wanted, and people felt as though brands had that responsibility to do, which was to play their role. And we did it as well with something we called Superhero Sunday, which was effectively where we gave away a portion of our orders every Sunday for a month, which we did in conjunction with our restaurant partners, and we gave that to frontline charities. So there were all sorts of moments there where that you might not think that is traditionally the work of marketing in so much as it's not. The focus is not driving short-term revenue. But what I think
also that some people would assume that a very tech-led business would be probably slightly less focused on that. It's almost like your version of Tesco's Every Little Helps. How are you supporting the communities? But a lot of those things you talked about, they're not the type of things that you can just spin up overnight. So how did you identify strategically what the right things to do? I mean, the NHS thing, I guess, was an easier one because we knew what was going. But how did you identify what, and then how did you quickly move to get some of these things set up? Because getting your restaurant partners to suddenly all agree to that on a Sunday, I'm imagining that's not a small operational undertaking.
It's not, no. And I think that one in particular is a really good example of where we looked at what were we hearing from our restaurant partners, was they wanted to do something to help. They wanted to, they are at the heart and at the centre of their communities. So it's often the case that these guys were the only people who were open on the high streets at certain points in the pandemic. And they wanted to have a way of giving back. And we wanted to facilitate that, but we wanted to contribute as well. So it's then about, well, thinking, how do we do that? How do we make sure we can do that authentically as Just Eat? And how do we build a platform that they can buy into, that we can buy into? But also you do have to do it really quickly. And I can sort of hear people in my team and in the wider business, when you say, well, you can't just turn these things around overnight, sort of shouting at their devices. We bloody well did. So it's some of these you have to go very quickly because the world was changing so rapidly, and it was reliant on us as a marketing team with our partner marketing team to make sure we were going out and engaging with the restaurants, but with our sales team to make sure that, and our account management team to make sure that they were helping them to work out how they could come onto the platform. Our tech team built solutions in a matter of days that helped us to surface that and helped us to deliver that. And we got into this incredible rhythm of, I think, finding opportunities, finding challenges or problems, and then coming to solutions and pulling together the various different parts of the organisation to deliver against that. And you can't do that forever. If you do that every week and every day, then you'll all sort of collapse, but actually it was appropriate at the time, and it was right that we were able to react quickly to the circumstances in front of us.
Right. Do you think that your team and your connection with some of the other teams to deliver these things, did you learn ways of working that actually you'll continue with, you'll apply, and you'll go, actually, we learned that we can do these things quicker if we work in a slightly different way? Or do you see them as they were very in the moment, we had to behave in a certain way? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think your team has become more agile as a result of going through that experience?
I wouldn't say more agile. I would say that actually what we did was to work out the value, or we really understood the value of working cross-functionally and the impact that you could make if, as an organization, you really pulled together on certain things and on certain, if you can energize the business behind certain opportunities, but also certain challenges, then the impact you could make is huge. And we did a similar thing over Christmas with our Christmas meal appeal, where we provided sort of over 100,000 meals for the homeless, which came as a consequence of us putting a customer donation mechanic into the product, which hadn't existed about 4 weeks before we did it. So I think we saw the value of that, but we also saw that there was an unsustainability, if such a word exists, in spinning that up really, really quickly every time. So actually what we needed to do was more think about how we put in processes, how we created accountabilities, how we made sure that we helped to lead in structuring those conversations, because people are absolutely happy to galvanize around something and really go after it in the short term if they're really,
that's a really good point.
There's a cause to get behind. But actually, if you do that to them every month, they soon get pretty pissed off with you. So you've got to make sure that you're building a sustainable way of doing that.
Yeah, no, that I think that's a really, really good point. And like I touched on at the very beginning that obviously you've worked in lots of digital businesses, and JustEat, clearly you're not sitting there. And I think you said when we were in the pre-chat, you get a bit annoyed at all of this chat about digital transformation at conferences, because that's not really relevant to you or your kind of businesses like you, whether in the same sector or they're in other sectors, where digital is at the heart of what you do. So if it isn't digital transformation, which the FMCGs or retail businesses are all kind of obsessing about, what is it beyond building kind of the brand for the long term? What is it that you obsess about and like you like keeps you awake?
It's a good question, and I'd say it's less an annoyance. It's more a difficulty to answer the question sometimes, but people say, well, what's your biggest tip for digital transformation? It's often that I've spent most of my career working in digital only businesses, so I'm probably not a very good person to answer that question. So I think for us it's about how do we make sure that, what do we obsess with? We obsess with working out ways in which we can delight our customers, ways in which we can engage with them, ways in which from a commercial point of view we're able to, I think, build on our market leadership position. So we're always looking for ways to innovate. We're always looking to ways to ensure that we're continually improving the experience for our customers, for our restaurant partners. We want JustEat to be that go-to for customers ordering takeaway meals. And we can only do this if we continue to invest and to innovate. And from a marketing point of view, we're looking at how do we create that story of incrementality. It's really important that we've got a big customer base. About 17 million people ordered with us last year. More people will order with us this year. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people ordering a lot of food. And it's important that the work that we do is proving to drive value and drive incrementality, which is absolutely key. But key to doing that is making sure that as a brand we're top of mind and we're always there. It's a high frequency purchase. So it's important that JustEat is top of mind and is you have that moment when you come to make that purchase decision. You don't necessarily need the brand to be there at the very moment they make the decision, but you need JustEat to be at the front of a customer's mind. So that's key in everything we do, whether it be sort of driving mental availability through our couriers and our sort of orange couriers on the street, which hopefully people are seeing more and more of,
Yes.
whether it be through our television advertising, whether it be through hopefully having customers having had a really good experience with us and telling their friends about it. So it's all of those various different parts that we talked about earlier on, all those various different touch points need to be in the right place in order that we're able to achieve those goals of really creating incremental growth.
Yeah, no, I love you calling out the kind of the delivery guys and girls in the orange. That actually that's a really key touch point. That's a key kind of reminder. Just in the same way as seeing an ad. And I think sometimes people forget those assets. If you're a bank, you've got a branch, right? You've got a poster site on every high street that you could be using differently. So I think that's a nice reminder. So moving to a conclusion, Matt, because we could probably chat all day, but I like to keep these kind of interviews quite punchy. Could I ask you something a bit more personal? So what's the one thing that you are working or you think you could do better to elevate kind of the role of marketing within your organization or at board level? Like, what's the thing that you're building or you're trying to upskill in? Because I think it's always interesting for people to hear like how successful senior marketeers are kind of continuing to learn and evolve and be curious, not that they've got there and they've done it and they need to keep learning.
I think that there are some fairly simple things, which is just to keep telling your story. And when I say your story, I don't mean my personal story, telling the story of what your team's doing and what their focus is. Because I think one of the things that we probably are guilty of is feeling as though everybody knows exactly what it is that we're doing. And it's making sure that you are, as a marketing team, you're front of mind and you're being really, really, I think, open in the work that you're doing and talking about some of the big things that you're delivering, some of which people won't expect. But you're also really clear in telling that story. And this is something I've learned over time is, and I talked about it earlier on, which is what are we trying to drive? What are we trying to achieve? And what's our plan and our strategy to achieve that? Yeah. And I think that takes a lot of the subjectivity out of it, because marketing is the most susceptible to subjectivity and people's opinions. There's
right, yeah.
Very, very rarely anybody walks into a room and says to the FD, I've been having a bit of a think about your statutory accounts, and I think maybe you could do it this way. Whereas as marketers, we're not short of people's opinions on our ads or on our comms or on our or on various different things that we do.
Very, very true.
And the key is to kind of remove that subjectivity and to give a really clear strategic reason and strategic story as to why you're doing it, and what it's there to achieve, and then being very clear that whether you've achieved that or not. So I think that's something I've learned, is to keep telling that story and to make sure that that story's front of mind, because if you assume people know it, you're usually wrong. I think is probably my my piece of advice. Great.
No, I really like that you're not just the kind of marketing director, you're the chief storyteller within the business. And you've given us some really great nuggets in this chat, Matt, kind of thinking about how to kind of think about the various different lead lag measures, how to think about the brand and the variety of touch points and how they all ladder up in a consumer's mind to what you stand for and whether you're relevant to their lives. And this whole thing around occasions, which I guess is a very kind of FMCG type way of thinking. You've built that into your business. You might be a tech business, but you now invest heavily into kind of making sure you've got the right mental availability and that you're top of mind, but with clearly a lot of analytics and data behind it to work out where maybe the investment is not going to pull as effectively for you. So look, I've really enjoyed the chat. Thank you so much for making the time, and I look forward to seeing the next journey that JustEat goes down.
It's been my pleasure, Paul. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Time for a Reset. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. We'll be back talking to a senior marketeer very soon. Make sure you don't miss out on any new episodes by subscribing on Apple, Spotify or SoundCloud, and leave us a review at timeforareset.co.uk.